Spiritist mediums reported hearing voices and seeing spiritual beings, often exhibiting symptoms typically associated with schizophrenia. Imagine waking up tomorrow and hearing a voice. It tells you it is God, knows things no one else could know, and changes your life forever. Moses at the burning bush, Joan of Arc hearing guiding whispers. These figures became cornerstones of faith and history. But if identical claims surfaced in a modern clinic, the response would be starkly different. Today, profound auditory or visual experiences can lead to a diagnosis, medication, and institutionalization. What separates a sacred revelation from a symptom of psychosis? And how did humanity's understanding of these extraordinary states transform so radically? For millennia, across continents and cultures, visionary experiences weren't just accepted, they were central. The Prophet Muhammad's revelations through Gabriel formed the bedrock of Islam. In Native American traditions, the Hambosia, or vision quest, was a deliberate, communal rite of passage designed to induce spiritual insight. Shamans, from Siberia to the Amazon, journeyed into ecstatic states, their visions providing healing and guidance for their entire societies. These weren't isolated incidents of individual minds, they were institutionalized pathways to knowledge, understood as direct communication from the spiritual realm, profoundly integrated into daily life and worldview. The 18th and 19th centuries ushered in a new era of scientific rationalism, gradually eroding the sacred status of extraordinary experiences. What was once divine communication began to be reclassified as madness. Physicians, seeking biological and psychological explanations, started to categorize and systematize these phenomena, transforming visions into hallucinations. The 19th century asylum became the new temple for those who had voices, a stark contrast to the reverent communal interpretations of previous eras. This marked the slow, inexorable shift from spiritual authority to medical authority over the inner world. Consider Joan of Arc, the Maid of Orleans, whose guiding voices led her to defy kings and command armies, ultimately shaping the fate of France. Or Teresa of Avila, the 16th century Spanish mystic, whose descriptions of profound ecstatic visions and spiritual marriage to Christ earned her sainthood and a Doctor of the Church title. These individuals were not merely tolerated, their experiences were painstakingly documented, debated, and ultimately canonized, not pathologized. Their visions were not seen as internal aberrations, but as windows to a higher truth, deeply embedded within the theological and social structures of their time. As science gained dominance, the once seamless fabric of spiritual interpretation began to fray. Enlightenment thinkers, like John Locke, championed empirical observation over supernatural claims, demanding evidence that transcended personal testimony. Early neurologists, studying brain lesions and seizures, proposed that spiritual experiences might be mere byproducts of neural activity. This emerging reason didn't just question individual visions, it challenged the very epistemology of spiritual knowledge, suggesting that the brain, not God, was the ultimate origin. The ground was slowly being prepared for a seismic shift in how society understood the voices and visions of its mystics. By the late 20th century, the shift was complete. The Diagnostic and Statistical Manual of Mental Disorders, or DSM, became the authoritative text, standardizing the language of mental illness. Experiences once described as divine encounters were now meticulously categorized under terms like psychosis, delusions, and hallucinations. While the DSM-4 did introduce a V-code for religious or spiritual problem, acknowledging non-pathological experiences, the underlying bias remained. The clinical lens often filtered out cultural context and spiritual meaning, reducing complex inner worlds to checklists of symptoms, often leading to diagnoses with profound social and personal consequences. In Brazil, a groundbreaking study examined 115 spiritist mediums who regularly reported hearing voices and seeing spiritual beings. On paper, many exhibited symptoms typically associated with schizophrenia, like Schneiderian first-rank symptoms. Yet, these individuals showed no signs of functional impairment, high social adjustment, and low rates of psychiatric disorders. Their experiences were culturally integrated, purposeful, and caused no distress. This profound disconnect revealed a critical truth. What is considered a symptom in one context can be a normal, even revered, experience in another. The brain may process information similarly, but cultural interpretation dictates meaning and pathology. The power to define what is normal and abnormal holds immense social and economic sway. A diagnosis carries the weight of state authority, determining access to care, legal rights, and personal freedoms. Beyond that, the pharmaceutical industry benefits immensely from expanding diagnostic categories, offering medications as solutions to what might otherwise be understood as spiritual or cultural phenomena. This system, while often well-intentioned, inherently favors medical intervention, sometimes at the expense of holistic, culturally sensitive approaches. The labels we attach to inner experiences are not neutral, they shape destinies. The very content of hallucinations is shaped by culture, illustrating the porous boundary between mind and world. Studies show striking differences. Only 12% of hallucinations in Chinese psychiatric patients had religious themes, compared to 36% in Korean patients and over 50% in a South African cohort. This isn't just a linguistic difference, it reflects deep societal frameworks. What manifests as a demon in one culture might be an ancestor in another, or entirely absent. This international evidence underscores that the experience itself is only half the story, the other half is how a society teaches its members to interpret, validate, or pathologize their inner landscapes. The allocation of research funds often reflects societal priorities. Billions flow into pharmaceutical research, seeking chemical solutions for conditions categorized as mental illness. Comparatively, less funding is directed towards interdisciplinary studies that explore the cultural and spiritual aspects of anomalous experiences, or to developing models of care that integrate traditional healing. This imbalance perpetuates a biomedical-centric approach, potentially overlooking culturally embedded pathways to well-being and meaning. The financial architecture of healthcare often reinforces the clinical narrative, sometimes at the expense of understanding the richer, more complex tapestry of human experience. Today, a growing movement within psychiatry seeks to rectify past misinterpretations, recognizing the ethical imperative to avoid epistemic injustice, the systematic devaluation of a patient's self-knowledge, particularly concerning spiritual beliefs. Clinicians like David Lakoff propose criteria for non-pathological spiritual experiences: absence of suffering, cultural compatibility, personal growth. Ken Wilber's model distinguishes transrational mystical states from prerational psychotic regression. The goal is a more nuanced approach, one that looks beyond the content of an experience to its impact on an individual's life, cultural context, and overall functioning, distinguishing between genuine spiritual emergence and distress requiring clinical intervention. Brain imaging reveals consistent neural signatures during both mystical states and pathological conditions, prompting fascinating questions about shared underlying mechanisms. The God helmet experiments, stimulating the temporal lobes, can induce spiritual presences. The default mode network suppression correlates with ego dissolution in both psychedelics and meditation. Yet, the neurological correlate fallacy reminds us, a brain state proves an experience occurred, not its origin or validity. Whether these experiences are purely brain-generated, or if the brain acts as a receiver for something transcendent, remains one of humanity's most profound and unanswerable mysteries. The experiences are undeniably real. Their ultimate source remains elusive.